But first, we go to Benjamin calling from California on Skype, actually. You can connect with us on Skype at username lrn.fm. Go ahead, Benjamin.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
I don't know if you guys have talked about this because I haven't been able to catch the podcast for a couple days, but have you heard about the tax on Cyprus bank accounts?
I've heard about it. We haven't gone in depth. It's the sort of thing that's getting a lot of coverage in a lot of other locations, and I tend to try to if I'm going to go to the deep end of a pool, I at least want to go to the deep end of a pool that other people aren't going to.
Well, that's not been my reason. I've been seeing the headlines, and I just really haven't taken the time to look into it.
I've looked into it.
Well, I think it's interesting. They're doing a tax where they're going to tax like 9.9% of accounts over $100,000, 100,000 euros.
According to the news today, that has been rejected.
Yeah, they're going to work something out. But I think it illustrates a good point about how Bitcoins are so much superior to traditional money. Because the only reason it could even be a proposed idea, is that the banks are controlled by the government. And so if the government came in and said, hey, banks, you need to give us this money, the banks would do it. But with Bitcoin, you maintain control of your account. No one can go into it and seize your money.
It's so true. And, of course, the Bitcoin skeptics/haters will be all over us now. You guys are always talking about Bitcoin on this show. Somebody accused us yesterday on our Facebook page
like 3 times.
of spending half of the time on the air talking about Bitcoins, which is ridiculous. But
I don't know if it's ridiculous. Sometimes I get that sense.
You think so?
But I'm all for it personally.
Well,
I think that's pretty outrageous. We don't talk about Bitcoin half the time on
I don't
the
think
show.
we talk about it half the time. I understand where people are coming from that say it's half the time. They're just sort of exaggerating in order to make a point, and I get where they're coming from. What I would say to that is I'm excited about Bitcoins. I like talking about Bitcoins. Also, Benjamin made this call. We did not. So he wanted to talk about it. And
you guys are just setting it up because you love Bitcoins. You set up this call.
Well, we didn't.
You're sponsored by Bitcoin. You're just shills.
All right. Then Free Talk Live's a bunch of liars. Why the hell would you listen to a radio show where you thought the hosts were a bunch of liars? Yeah. I mean, for God's sakes, you can get that on every other single talk show. Why would you listen to Free Talk Live if we're going to lie to you?
I don't know if anyone's accusing us of setting up calls.
I think that people do think to some or greater extent that people on Free Talk Live would tell some untruth if it benefited them in some way, and I hope that that's not true. I work very hard not to do that in my own life. But I think that Bitcoin's a solution, and that's why Free Talk Live talks about it. We in the past have been accused of being Free State Project Radio. Mm-hmm. Why? Because we believe it's a solution, and we talk about it. I mean, what the hell is Rush Limbaugh? He's Vote Republican Radio, for God's sake, because he believes that's the solution to the problems that we face. Yeah. That's what we do on talk radio. We point out a problem. We point out a solution. If you don't like our solution, I don't know what to tell you. We try to vet these things and come up with the best solutions we can.
So anyway, you were going to say something about Cyprus, Benjamin?
But just that, okay, like you pointed out, the proposal was eventually rejected because it was a proposal of, here's the things you need to do in order for us to bail you out, and the Cyprus parliament or whatever rejected it. Now, I just want to point out, though, that yes, this was rejected, but if it's being proposed now, it will be proposed later. Mm-hmm. It will be proposed other places, and eventually somewhere it will pass. Eventually somewhere they'll go, it sucks, but this is what we got to do.
I guess we got to do it.
You love your country, don't you?
Yeah, right. Well, it's whether you love your country or not. It really has to do with the country claims to own you. If they can take a portion of your income through income tax, then they're taking your labor.
Sure, but they're going to put a bunch of niceties around it, like, well, it's just your duty. It's your duty to your country, and you love America or Cyprus or whatever.
For a country would never be able to come out and say, we own you, screw you, that money's ours.
Right. What strikes me about it is the Austrian arguments about our present situation waging war on the savers by inflating your money supply.
Yep.
This is a real
All-out
explicit
war.
version of that.
This is a running of phalanx right down the middle of the savers' hearts.
Well, Johnny Ray brings up an important point. That is that this is always going on. They're always raiding your bank account, but you don't see the balance go down. In this case, that would be the difference here, is that you would see the balance actually go down. But when they print money out, that is a raid on your savings, because whenever they add money to the money supply, that makes the money that you have, if you have state-provided money like the dollar, it makes it worth less. So ultimately, the more they print out, the weaker your dollars in your bank account. It's the same effect, but it's much more insidious because people don't notice the change. It's just their buying power gets weaker over time.
I'm no expert, but I suspect that it was only a proposal for Cyprus because they can't inflate their money because they're tied in with the euro. So it was for them specifically; they would have to go take it directly. I also suspect that it probably was a rejected proposal because once it was even announced that this was on the table, the banks decided to go ahead and stay closed because people were about to start running on the bank. There were lots of
wasn't
people
it an order by the government to close the banks, or was it the bank's own choice?
I don't know, but I suspect it would have been either one. I mean, the banks didn't want to be ran on. There were already people going, as soon as you guys are open, we're going out and withdrawing all of our money. So, I don't know whether it was an order or the banks decided to do it, but if the government didn't order them to do it, I'm sure they would have just gone ahead and done it. There's no reason for them not to. But again, I just want to point out, this is why something like Bitcoins or gold or silver, something where you get to hold, where no one has access to your money or currency, or however you want to look at it, is superior to having, say, a bank account.
Excellent points, Benjamin. Anything else you want to share?
Nope, that was it.
Thanks for the call tonight. That's Benjamin on Skype, by the way. You can Skype in as well at username LRN.FM.
I heard an interesting thought today, and I guess it's a conspiracy theory, is that the reason Bitcoin's had a run up was because, probably somebody in Cyprus or two people in Cyprus. It doesn't take, tremendous amounts of money to run up the Bitcoin market a few points. They had, they found out their bank accounts were going to get run, so they took all their money out of the bank account, or at least a good portion, stuck it into Bitcoin so it'd be safe.
Yep.
So it's a possibility. It ran from like 55 to 62 today.
It was around 59 when we started the show, I think. Yeah,
it's down a little bit from there, but yeah, I mean,
that's almost $10 in 24 hours. I mean, because last night we were talking about how it crossed over 50.
One thinks about the 50 and 60 as a big deal, but back when it was at 5 or 6, it wasn't that big of a deal for it to move from 5 to 6 inside of a day or two. So, not that big of a deal to move from 50 to 60.
Okay. I know. I guess where I see where you're coming from, but that seems pretty big to me. Like, that's a 20% jump in 24 hours. That seems pretty big.
It seems big to me, and anything over 50 was big to me. Anything around 50 was big for a week and a half or so.
I say anything that's less than 100 is a steal.
855-450-FREE. That's the SACL CAI toll-free line. And in this country, as Benjamin pointed out, obviously, they have the ability to print money, unlike Cyprus. But what about the states? They don't get to print money. What about California and Illinois and a lot of these other states that are billions of dollars in the hole because